Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Toolkit Tuesdays. My name is Chris Spain. I'm the Vice President of Enterprise Networking here at Juniper Networks, and I'm joined with Tony, and we're going to be here discussing our SDN solutions for the branch.
My name is Tony Sarachandra, and I'm Director of Product Management for Contrail SD-WAN and the Contrail Service Orchestration product. Great to be with you here today.
So Tony, before we dive into the webinar, why don't we just talk about some of the trends that are driving the wide area network? I think the most obvious one is the cloud. With changing traffic patterns, more of our information is being consumed to and from the cloud. The amount of traffic actually that needs to be on my intranet is diminishing. Therefore, am I thinking about perhaps where I egress to the internet in a different way?
Absolutely. And this is where I think a lot of enterprises are looking to reduce operational as well as overall spend in terms of circuit costs, because no longer does a lot of your intranet traffic need to go to the data center within the enterprise. It can actually egress locally on your sites. And then having the ability to, for example, break out applications like, Salesforce.com or Office 365 locally at the sites really can save specific enterprises quite a lot of cost and bandwidth as a result.
So if you just think about that, again, if all of my traffic and most of what I do is Salesforce.com, Office 365, if I'm backhauling that to the data center, to egress to the internet, to come back, and then back over the intranet to me, that's a 400% bandwidth penalty, and I've got 2 round trip times. So the application experience by doing that local breakout should also be much better. So if I think of my old SLA being uptime, and that's probably all I got. In this new world, my SLA needs to evolve to be application visibility, and how is that actually performing?
Yeah, because no longer is it okay for the application just to be working. It needs to be working with an acceptable performance that is, acceptable to the end user. So the expectations of the users have changed, and therefore the network really needs to adapt to meet these changing expectations.
So I believe we're going to run through a demo.
Yeah, let's do that, Chris. So the Contrail Service Orchestration application is available both as a native cloud service that customers can consume over the public intranet, or it can be installed locally on the private data center to be run and operated privately within your enterprise.
Okay, so if I have a preference for on-prem, that option's available too, but perhaps if I want to avoid the operational headache of that, I can also consume this as a cloud managed option.
All you need is an internet connection from your sites to the internet, and you're good to go.
So, Chris, before we start off with the demo, let's have a quick look at the topology. So you can see that there's 2 hubs here in Dallas as well as Chicago. We have a couple of spoke sites: Seattle West, Los Angeles on the West Coast, Orlando and New York East on the East Coast.
So now why don't we go and maybe double click on application and SLA visibility, Tony?
Yeah, sounds good, Chris. So we have, as you can see on a given link, we show what the applications are. But if we were to go to, let's say, pick a site in New York and drill down into the details. So New York East, we can see some information around the WAN links. It has 2 WAN links, WAN 0 and WAN 1, as mentioned. And then we can see that the reason that the site score is not a 5 out of 5 is that in the past, earlier today, there has been an SLA violation where the SLA has not been met.
The only SLA you get from your carrier is uptime. But now I get that I've exceeded some parameter. So this is actually a great way for me to keep my carrier honest.
That is correct. You can see whether the specific circuit that you have traffic on is meeting the SLA from an application perspective. It's actually not a L3 perspective, it's from an application perspective.
Here I see we have an SLA event, and it looks like my round trip time, for some reason, was 5 times what the target should be. So when that happened, what did I do? What application did I move?
Yeah, so as you can see, YouTube and HTTPS in this particular case did not meet the SLA target. of 100 milliseconds and was actually getting 500. So the controller actually took proactive action and moved it from WAN 0 to WAN 1 in this case. So this is an example of how the system tries to dynamically adjust applications and individual applications based on the desired SLA for that application.
So here in your lab, it's easy to play with YouTube, but typically that kind of SLA would be for voice or video conferencing and not YouTube. Perhaps.
That is correct. That is correct.
Application visibility. Let's show me what applications are maybe running across my network and maybe what I can do about it if I find some that I don't like.
Yeah, so let's drill down into, so we have several areas of application visibility. The first is that we provide visibility of what applications are actually transiting your network. And you can view that in various forms, in chart view, in grid view. And then we also report on top users by volume, top category by volume, top characteristics by volume. So you can see a lot of individual per application data. And then the other thing is that if you marry this with an enterprise LDAP or Active Directory system, we can also report on a per user basis and not have on a per IP address basis as is shown here today.
So if for example, here I notice an application that maybe surprises me, that people are watching YouTube at work, can I now go and block that?
You can absolutely do that, and we'll cover that later in the firewall policy example.
Okay.
But
so if you go back to the bubble chart, I kind of like the bubble chart because this is a lot of gobbledygook to me. The size of the bubble here is the magnitude of the traffic?
Yeah, the size represents the volume of the traffic, and then we can see it by bandwidth or by number of sessions. We can see it by the last period and so forth as well. We can also have different views such as heat maps as well as kind of zoomable, kind of bubble graphs here as you can see as well. The other area that Chris, I think with respect to SD-WAN is, we have a view where for the enterprise IT manager, you can see the actual SLA going back to what we talked about a minute ago. So you can see that the 3 sites here are mostly meeting the SLA, but if I were to go into a specific site, it'll actually show you the individual SLAs of the actual applications at that particular site.
So Tony, let's maybe go and take a look at some application SLAs, and let's maybe pick a site that seems to be having a few challenges. How do I zoom into that?
Yeah, so let's pick New York, for example.
Okay, so Tony, this doesn't look like it's telling me very much at the moment. Yeah, so like, where would I go here to find out maybe an issue?
Yeah, so what you can see here on the scatter plot is that most of the applications on the top right-hand side are behaving as expected, but this one application, as it happens, YouTube, is not really behaving to the best possible case. And so you can really drill down into individual applications and see how they're doing. So in this case, YouTube, you see that once it comes up, that there's been some high jitter activity. In this particular case, there was some variable jitter based on some sessions, and so that's why it's actually not getting the full 100 out of 100 application score in this particular case.
Okay, so I can measure here things like round trip time, packet loss, and jitter, and react. And normally, again, it would be sort of a Skype for Business kind of application or something interactive rather than a streaming application. But we all have to deal with the demo tools we have.
We do indeed.
So do we perhaps now want to go look at an SLA profile?
Yeah, let's do that. So we have a couple of different ways to set up the SD-WAN policies, but let me kind of give you a quick overview. The system comes with some built-in SLA policies and profiles.
And for the majority of customers, these would probably meet all of their needs. They probably don't need to create their own.
That is correct. That is correct. So we grouped, frequently used applications. As you can see, email, productivity, file share, given a specific SLA that's targeted with packet loss, jitter, and round trip time, and those are built into the system.
Okay, that's great. And then if I wanted to maybe look at all of the apps within a particular group, how would I do that?
Yeah, so to see the individual apps, you can go into shared objects, and then you can see here you can see that in this particular case, the CSO Collaboration AV group is comprised of all of these apps like Zoom, WebEx, Skype, etc., which are very common productivity apps within the enterprise.
And if I, for example, I'm a Ring Central user, and I wanted to add Ring Central to that group, I could do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can create your own groups and add your own apps into the group.
And I could kick ones out that I don't care about.
Absolutely.
Like nobody cares about Cisco WebEx, for example.
Exactly.
I could throw that one out.
You can definitely throw that one out, and they're customizable based on your unique enterprise needs.
So Tony, we mentioned hubs and we mentioned spokes. I'm guessing most people build a hub and spoke topology because the cost of doing a full mesh is a sort of an n times n minus 1 problem. But what if I have site-to-site traffic between two of those spokes? Is there a way to optimize how that will actually go so I'm not tromboning everything through the hub?
We have a capability called dynamic meshed SD-WAN. So traffic is initially going through the Dallas hub if they were going between Los Angeles and Seattle. But based on the traffic flow, the system can dynamically bring up that tunnel between directly between Seattle and Los Angeles and reroute the traffic.
So this is great. So we can build these on demand. But I'm expecting people will still request, I want full mesh because I don't know. So the other benefit I see of this system is we can actually show you how often those dynamic tunnels are created. And I suspect with things like UC as a service, they will actually be created less and less often.
That is true. Most of the time, as we said earlier, traffic is going between the site to the hub and to the cloud. So it's either taking the local breakout path at the site or going directly to the hub. So the need for direct site-to-site communication is really, based on current trends is reducing, but should you need that, we have that capability to cater adequately and dynamically.
Perfect. So why don't we go and maybe take a look at the security capabilities, because I believe we can actually do unified threat management with our SD-WAN solution as well.
If you have SRXs that are being managed as standalone firewalls, again, it can be either behind a third-party CPE or acting as the WAN router itself. We can manage the full security policies on the SRX firewall as well from the cloud natively. So here, as you can see, there's several firewall policies, and if you go into the all-site firewall policy, there are several rules that are configured in this particular case. For example, New York East is set up to block Facebook and Twitter as an example. And we have full application firewalling. So, we have support for over 4,200 apps that you can include to block on a per site or on a per department basis.
And typically things like web filtering and those kinds of things for offensive content would be able to do that as well, Tony?
Yeah, so web filtering is under UTM. And so if you go into UTM, you can define various web filtering profiles, and you can create those profiles, and we support things like antivirus, anti-spam, content filtering, and then create those profiles and add those as a UTM profile into your firewall rule set.
Okay, so if I want to take the standard ones, they'll probably cover the vast majority of my use cases.
That's correct. So you can see there's a custom UTM profile, and then if you want to add that, it's very simple. You simply go into the firewall rule set, pick a firewall rule, and you select edit, and then you can apply that custom UTM policy right here. So it's a very simple process of being able to apply UTM to your existing firewall rule set.
Okay, and then I see at the top you've got logging turned off, I guess, but I can basically log all of this to get visibility into what's going on as well.
Absolutely, you can log, and that's an area that we touched on earlier. But we have extensive visibility of security events, for example. So if you go back into the visibility piece, we have extensive visibility on all the security events as well as traffic logs. So you can see here that there's been lots of denies for the New York site because it has a policy that is in place. So you can see the firewall has denied certain access to specific sites. And then you can also see specific application traffic logs across the whole enterprise.
Why don't we now maybe go take a look at what we can do for that LAN configuration and Wi-Fi integration in the branch?
We have the ability to manage our LAN switches, particularly the EX product family, behind any third-party CPE. So it doesn't need to be necessarily Juniper. If you have an EX deployment within your enterprise, we can help you manage and gain additional visibility and control over that LAN infrastructure.
Okay. And I see you have an access point there as well. And Juniper recently acquired Mist. Is there any form of integration here?
There is. So we use LLDP between the LAN switch and the access point to discover the access point through CSO. And so CSO can therefore provide you a single pane of device inventory at a given site between your switch infrastructure, your WAN infrastructure, and your Wi-Fi infrastructure. And then we provide single sign-on capability between the Contrail SD-WAN cloud service and the Mist cloud service portal as well.
Okay. So basically, I can really manage now the entire branch using this solution.
Yeah, Chris. So let's switch to another tenant where this one is called Acme Corp, where we actually have a site that has multiple devices, including some of the LAN pieces that you mentioned.
So here we're looking at devices in that particular site, and I see we've got a CPE, that's the router. There's an EX switch. And we've got an access point. So why don't we just click on the switch and see what it tells us?
Yeah, so in this particular site, there's an EX2300 sitting behind the SRX. And we can see some port status, input bandwidth, output bandwidth. There's no errors in this particular case, and some resource utilization for the switch.
So as expected, a switch in a branch, it's over-provisioned, undersubscribed, so everything's pretty healthy here. So Tony, go ahead and click on the AP and let's see what happens.
Yeah, so when you click on the AP, Chris, you can seamlessly get diverted to the Mist cloud. Okay. You can see that all of the analytics and telemetry that is specific to that access point at that site.
Okay, so basically Mist is in the cloud and we have CSO in the cloud. They're both microservices-based applications, and we are able to do API integration. So essentially, we've achieved SDN federation here.
That is correct.
Okay, so if we go down maybe and click on that access point, we see we've got 8 clients connected. So this allows you to go in and configure. And maybe if you go up and just click on monitor, Tony, we can see here there's a bunch of applications that are running. So very similar look, feel. I almost didn't notice we went from one application to the next.
That's
so
right.
I think this is truly that ability to integrate from cloud to cloud.
Yeah, and from a customer perspective, from a user experience perspective, it is fairly seamless. So you really have a unified solution to manage all your devices at the branch.
On the branch, that's perfect. Why don't we maybe talk about another aspect of what this software-defined networking brings in terms of zero-touch provisioning?
Yeah, so one of the key aspects of the system is the ability to zero-touch activate and provision a site. So let me try and go and show that. So here we can go and add a particular spoke site, and let's call that
So a spoke is typically a branch, Tony, correct?
That's correct. The spoke in the system is a branch, and that can be a single device or comprised of multiple devices.
And then a site group, if I want to have a cookie cutter across maybe thousands of sites, I could put them in a site group to achieve that.
Yeah, you can create a site template, or you can group multiple sites under site group and apply the template across multiple sites simultaneously.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so here, if you want to go in, we have a couple of choices. You can, configure a SD-WAN site or an SD-WAN plus LAN site. So let's do that. We have a choice of, enterprise hub sites. We'll leave the default. You can provide some basic contact information, and advanced configuration options are available, but not necessary to enter in at this point in time. The next step is that you're able to go in and select the type of device that you want to onboard. So let's select SRX as a branch SD-WAN device. We can put in the serial number, and this is the key piece of information. I'm just going to put in a dummy serial number for this particular instance. And you can also choose to automatically upgrade the device at initial boot time.
So basically, the person shows up, plugs it in, assuming there's connectivity across the internet. That's all they have to do. No CLI, no nest of cables, no sending CCIE out to get a site up and running. Literally plug it in and off I go.
That is correct. The system is designed to be hopefully idiot-proof in that sense.
There's always the new and improved idiot, Tony.
Absolutely. So then you can go in and configure any number of WAN links. We have choice of internet or MPLS, and whether the IP configuration can be static or DHCP. But
if it was static, then pretty much I'm going to have to stage the box.
That is true. Sure. That is true. So for normal zero-touch activation, DHCP is required.
Yeah. So, and static is perhaps more prevalent with MPLS than it is with an internet connection?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then you just go next. And then the next here is the, the switch at this particular site, because we added the LAN piece as well. So we can say, SF switch, give it a name in this particular case. And we have a number of different types of switches. We support 4300s, 3400s, as well as the 2300s. Let me just select the 2300 in this particular case. And we have an option to, configure how the switch is provisioned, and as well, provision various LAN segments on the switch.
So those LAN segments typically would be for maybe employees, maybe IoT?
Yeah,
those kinds of things?
Exactly. A LAN segment typically maps into a VLAN and can be for things like guest Wi-Fi, corporate internet access, and whatnot. And we actually separate out the LAN segments as departments across the SD-WAN overlay. So we provide complete network separation end-to-end from the switch all the way across the WAN.
But if you think of the analogy of Wi-Fi and LAN coming together, typically it's going to be departments would be employee, guest, maybe IoT, and it's a way of segregating them and then allowing either policy between those various departments.
You're absolutely correct, Chris. That's correct. So here I give it a gateway address, which is the gateway of the LAN segment in this particular case. And then subsequent to setting up the switch.
So I also have a separate management network for the switch, and that's really just a security.
Yeah, so the management network for the switch can be separate to the endpoint network that the client's connected to.
Okay. And then don't you want to turn zero-touch provisioning on there, Tony?
Yes, so we can enable zero-touch provisioning, and we can select the image if one was available to automatically upgrade the switch as well. And that's as simple as that, Chris. And Once you click OK, we'll start the provisioning process for both the CPE at the San Francisco site, along with the LAN switch that is connected behind it.
So if I thought of the old way of doing this, which is get the box, unpack the box, configure the box, repack the box, ship the box, we can avoid all of that, send it to site, and basically a set of smart hands rather than an expert can get it up and running.
Yeah, the goal is to minimize the complexity and the time to bring up the site as quickly as possible.
Okay, perfect. So why don't we maybe now jump on to maybe some things that perhaps would be more interesting to a large organization or a managed service provider. So this idea of multi-tenancy and role-based access control. And maybe we start with what is sort of the operator hierarchy we have within our Contrail SD-WAN system?
Yeah, so great question, Chris. So we've designed the system ground up to be truly multi-tenant. So we have 2 levels of multi-tenancy in the cloud service. One is what we called an operating company, and the other is a tenant. And the operating company is really designed for partners and managed service providers who want to administer, create individual tenants or enterprise customers. Or if you're an enterprise customer directly, the provided access would be at the tenant level only.
Okay, so maybe I'm a service provider and I've got multiple customers underneath that, or maybe I'm a tier 1 service provider and I have operating companies underneath that. And underneath that, I have actual tenants. I can cover all of those scenarios.
Absolutely. And we have very granular role-based access control. So if I were to add Chris as a role, Chris's role here, we can assign specific activities to Chris at a very granular level. So we can say,
I would let Chris do as little as possible. Yeah,
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
But should you wish to do more or limit yourself, we have the ability to just provide read-only access, for example, and then perhaps limit configuration to read-only while providing read-write access for security policies as an example.
Okay. So you truly can cater to the executive.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, so that seems it's very comprehensive. And maybe within an enterprise, my tenants could be east, central, and west. I want to break the administration domains up.
We can provide various tenants capability across different regions and limit them to specific sites or site groups as well.
Okay. So maybe just in summary, as we've gone through this demo, I think we've basically shown SD-WAN is going beyond just the WAN. We're including the LAN and the Wi-Fi. So it's really now more of a software-defined branch. And we've actually demonstrated we can federate these SDN controllers together as well. And as we went through this, it was very simple and slick. So thank you for the demo. And if you had any sort of parting thoughts, given you're the sort of owner of this, Tony, what would they be?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right, Chris. So our first step has been to make the branch experience for the end customer as simple as possible and support all of the different devices and the workflows that are typical on the branch. However, we are also quickly moving to support the broader enterprise and the campus.
And if people wanted to find out more, there's going to be a couple of links on the screen in a moment where they can go and find out more information.
Absolutely.